The elevator doors slid open on the 8th floor, and I saw my fiancé's hands exploring the waist of a woman wearing a dress that cost more than my entire year's salary. She looked over his shoulder, saw me standing there in my teacher's cardigan, and laughed with a cruel, jagged sound. "Oh, honey," she drawled, swirling her wine. "Are you the cleaning crew? We're busy." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just realized that destroying him would be the most satisfying lesson plan I ever wrote. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I had spent 45 minutes on my hair. That was the first thought that popped into my head, completely unbidden and utterly ridiculous, given the circumstances. I had spent nearly an hour blowing it out with the round brush, smoothing down the frizz that the Savannah humidity loved to encourage, all because I wanted to look like the polished, elegant partner of a rising landscape architect. I was wearing my favorite navy sheath dress, the one Caleb always said made me look like a young Jackie Kennedy, and I had even put on the pearl earrings my mother gave me for my college graduation. I felt sophisticated. I felt like I belonged in his world of high-stakes contracts and historical renovations. I had parked in the garage, navigated the security desk with a wave to the night guard, and ridden the elevator up with a stomach full of butterflies. We were going to the Gray for dinner. It was a celebration. I didn't even know what for yet, but Caleb had texted me to meet him at the office because he had big news. I assumed it was the Henderson contract. He had been obsessing over those blueprints for months, talking about stone pathways and water features until my eyes glazed over. I was ready to toast to his success. I was ready to be the supportive girlfriend. The elevator chimed, a cheerful, innocent sound, and the doors parted. The office was dimly lit, the overhead fluorescents killed in favor of the warm, amber glow of the desk lamps. It was supposed to be empty. It was supposed to be just Caleb wrapping up a few emails. Instead, the air smelled of expensive perfume, something heavy with jasmine and tuberose that instantly coated the back of my throat. And there they were. They were standing right outside his office door, pressed against the corridor wall as if they couldn't wait another 10 seconds to get inside. Caleb, the man I had shared a lease with, the man whose laundry I folded, the man whose grandmother's terrifying birthday dinners I endured with a smile, had his hands buried in the fabric of a crimson dress. It was a red dress. Not just red, but a violent, screaming crimson. It was backless, tight enough to show the indent of her spine, and looked like it was made of silk spun by spiders who only ate money. I froze. My feet felt like they had been poured into concrete blocks. My purse slipped from my shoulder and hit the crook of my elbow, but I didn't reach up to fix it. I just stared. Caleb was kissing her neck. He was devouring it, actually. He looked hungry. He looked passionate. He looked nothing like the tired, stressed-out man who had come home to me the night before and claimed he was too exhausted to even watch a movie. The woman sensed the shift in the air before he did. She pulled back slightly, her hand still resting possessively on his chest. She turned her head. She was stunning. Of course she was. She had hair the color of polished copper, cascading in perfect waves that made my 45-minute blowout look like an amateur effort. Her makeup was flawless, her skin luminous even in the low light. She looked at me, blinking slowly, her eyes traveling from my sensible navy heels up to my pearl earrings. There was no guilt in her face. There was no shock. There was only a mild, condescending amusement. She smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse before batting it across the linoleum. "Oh, honey," she said. Her voice was thick with the exaggerated southern drawl, dripping with syrup that was clearly meant to mask the poison. "Did management not tell you?" Caleb stiffened. I saw his spine lock up. He knew that voice. He knew my silence. The woman continued, gesturing vaguely at me with a manicured hand that held a glass of dark red wine. "We're in a meeting, sweetie. Are you the cleaning crew? You're early. We need you to come back in about an hour." The cleaning crew. She thought I was the help. I stood there. wearing a dress I had saved up for, wearing my mother's pearls, standing 10 feet away from the man I had been dating for 2 years. And this woman thought I was there to empty the trash cans. It was the most humiliating moment of my life, but strangely, it was also the moment the fog cleared. Caleb turned around slowly. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. All the blood had drained from his cheeks, leaving him looking sickly and gray. His mouth opened, closed, and opened again like a fish gasping for oxygen on a dock. "Alara," he croaked. His voice cracked. He sounded 12 years old. The woman frowned, confusion finally rippling across her perfect forehead. She looked at Caleb, then back at me. "Alara?" she repeated, testing the name. "I thought you said the cleaning lady's name was Marta." Caleb stammered. He took a step away from her, his hands coming up in a surrender motion that was pathetic to witness. "This isn't—" "No," I said. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. It was calm. It was steady. It was the voice I used when a student threw up in the middle of reading circle. "I'm definitely the cleaning lady, apparently." I looked at Caleb. I looked him dead in the eye. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to see the realization washing over me. "I'll just come back later," I said, my voice dropping an octave, "when the trash is ready to be taken out." The elevator doors were starting to close. It was a modern building, so they moved with a slow, heavy finality. I stepped backward, tripping slightly over my own heels, desperate to get behind that metal barrier before I shattered. Caleb lunged forward. "Alara, wait! No, wait!" The woman grabbed his arm. I saw her fingers dig into his bicep. "Caleb, who is that? You said you were single." "Let go of me," he snapped at her, shaking her off with a violence that made her stumble in her designer heels. He ran toward the elevator, but he was too late. I hammered the close door button with my thumb, pressing it so hard I thought I might break the plastic. The door slid shut just as he reached the threshold. Through the narrowing gap, I saw his face, sweaty, panicked, eyes wide with the realization that his life was currently imploding. Then the doors sealed, and I was alone. The silence in the elevator was deafening. The gentle hum of the machinery lowering me down 8 floors felt like a scream. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic, irregular rhythm that made my vision blur. I leaned back against the mirrored wall and slid down until I was crouching on the floor. I couldn't stand. My knees had turned to water. "Cleaning lady," I whispered to the empty car. "Cleaning lady." I looked at my reflection in the chrome doors. I looked nice. I looked respectable. But compared to her, compared to that crimson dress and that effortless, expensive gloss, I looked like a substitute teacher who had gotten lost on her way to the library. Why hadn't he corrected her? That was the thought that pierced through the shock like a hot needle. When she asked if I was the maid, he hadn't immediately said, "No, that's my girlfriend." He hadn't said, "That's the woman I love." He had frozen. He had hesitated. In that hesitation, he had told me everything I needed to know about how he saw me. I was a placeholder. I was the safe option, the comfortable option, the one you keep around for family dinners and laundry days, while you have your passionate meeting encounters with women who wear crimson silk. The elevator dinged on the ground floor. The sound made me flinch violently. I scrambled to my feet, smoothing down my dress with trembling hands. I couldn't let the security guard see me like this. I had to hold it together. I had to walk to my car. Just walk to the car, Alara. Left foot, right foot. Do not vomit in the lobby. I made it past the security desk with a tight, grimacing smile that probably looked more like a stroke symptom than a greeting. Miles, the night guard, gave me a confused wave, probably wondering why the happy woman who went up 5 minutes ago was now fleeing the building like it was on fire. The parking garage was cold and smelled of gasoline and damp concrete. The echo of my heels on the pavement sounded like gunshots. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers refusing to cooperate. They felt numb, clumsy, like I was wearing thick mittens. My phone started vibrating in my purse. It wasn't a ring. I always kept it on silent, but the vibration against my hip felt aggressive. Bzzzt, bzzzt, bzzzt. I knew who it was. I didn't need to look. I finally jammed the key into the door of my Honda Civic, a reliable, sensible car for a reliable, sensible girl, and threw myself into the driver's seat. I locked the doors immediately, all 4 of them. Only then did I let out the breath I had been holding since the 8th floor. The air in the car was stale, baking in the Georgia heat even in November. I gripped the steering wheel. My hands were shaking so badly the leather wheel vibrated. Breathe, I commanded myself. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. It's what I told the kids when they got overwhelmed. It wasn't working. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a hydraulic press. I couldn't get enough air. Short, shallow gasps were all I could manage. The phone in my purse stopped buzzing. Silence. Then it started again immediately. I grabbed the purse, ripped it open, and pulled out the phone. Incoming call, Caleb. I stared at the screen. His picture was there, a selfie of us from the pumpkin patch last month. We looked happy. He had his arm around me, wearing that flannel shirt I bought him for his birthday. I looked at his smiling face on the screen, and then I flashed back to his panicked, sweaty face in the hallway. I declined the call. It rang again instantly. I declined it again. My vision was swimming. Black spots danced at the edges of my periphery. I was hyperventilating. You are not going to pass out in a parking garage, I hissed at myself. You are Ilara Vance. You are a professional. You do not faint. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. It lit up again and again. The screen was a strobe light of his desperation. I forced myself to start the car. The engine sputtered to life. I put it in reverse, checking the rearview mirror out of habit, half expecting to see him running behind the car, banging on the trunk. He wasn't there. He was probably still upstairs, trying to explain to the crimson dress why the cleaning lady had the audacity to look so hurt. I peeled out of the garage, clipping the curb on my way out. I didn't care. I just needed to get away from that building. I needed to be somewhere where the air didn't smell like his cologne and her jasmine perfume. My apartment was in the Victorian district, the bottom floor of a subdivided townhouse. It was charming, which is realtor speak for old and drafty. I usually loved it. I loved the high ceilings and the creaky pine floors. Tonight, as I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, it felt like a tomb. It was so quiet. I locked the deadbolt behind me and leaned against the door, closing my eyes. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I could hear a siren wailing somewhere blocks away. I kicked off my heels. They hit the wall with a satisfying thud. I peeled off the navy dress, leaving it in a heap on the floor, and pulled on my oversized sweatpants and an old t-shirt. I went to the kitchen and opened a bottle of wine. I didn't bother with a glass initially. I just took a swig straight from the bottle like a character in a bad country song. The Merlot was acidic and warm, but it burned in a way that felt grounding. I carried the bottle and a large glass to the couch and sat down. My phone was still in my purse by the door. I could hear it vibrating against the floorboards. It was relentless. Finally, I got up, retrieved it, and brought it back to the safety of my couch fortress. I looked at the notifications. 43 missed calls. 17 text messages. I didn't open them. I just looked at the previews on the lock screen. They were a masterclass in panic. Ilara, please pick up. It's not what you think. She's a client, a very important client. She was drunk. She didn't know what she was saying. Please let me explain. I love you. You know I love you. Don't do this. Don't do this, I said aloud to the empty room. I didn't do anything. I opened the messaging app. The wall of gray bubbles scrolled up the screen, a frantic monologue of a man trying to spin a narrative before the concrete dried. She means nothing to me. I was just trying to keep the account. Please, Alara, I'm coming over. That one made me sit up straighter. I'm coming over. I typed back for the first time. My fingers flew across the glass. If you come here, I will call the police. I am not joking. Do not come near me tonight. The 3 dots appeared immediately. He was typing. Then they disappeared. Then they appeared again. Okay. I'll give you space. But please, we have to talk tomorrow. Grandmother's dinner. Please tell me you're still coming. We can fix this. I stared at the words. Grandmother's dinner. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving, the annual Brennan family gathering at the matriarch's estate, the event of the season, the dinner where attendance was mandatory and perfection was expected. He wasn't worried about losing me. He was worried about losing face. He was worried about showing up alone to Grandmother Eleanor's table and explaining why his sensible girlfriend had vanished. A slow, cold anger began to replace the panic in my chest. It wasn't a fiery rage. It was something sharper, more clinical. It was the feeling I got when I caught a student cheating on a test and realized I had to document everything for the administration. I took a long sip of wine. We can fix this, I whispered, mocking his text. Oh, we were going to fix it, all right. Just not the way he thought. I woke up with a headache that felt like someone was driving a railroad spike through my left temple. The sunlight streaming through my bedroom blinds seemed personally offended by my existence. For a split second, that blissful, cruel microsecond after waking, I forgot. I stretched my legs under the duvet and thought about making coffee. Then the memory of the red dress hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. The 8th floor, the cleaning lady, the way he froze. I rolled over and groaned, pulling the pillow over my face. The urge to stay in bed and rot was overwhelming. I could just turn off my phone, draw the curtains, and spend Thanksgiving eating stale crackers and crying over rom-coms. But then I thought about her laugh, that condescending, jagged laugh. Are you the cleaning crew? She hadn't just insulted me, she had dismissed my entire existence. And Caleb? He had let her. He had prioritized her comfort over my dignity. I threw the pillow across the room. It knocked over a stack of books on my nightstand, but I didn't care. No, I said, my voice raspy with sleep and dehydrated rage. Absolutely not. I sat up. My head throbbed, but my mind was clearing. I grabbed my iPad from the bedside table. If I was going to survive today, if I was going to face him, face his terrifying grandmother, face his entire judging family, I needed ammunition. I couldn't just walk in there and cry. Tears were easily dismissed. Tears made you look hysterical. I needed facts. I needed evidence. I needed to be a professor of history presenting a thesis on the downfall of the Roman Empire. Except the empire was Caleb Brennan. I went to the kitchen, started the coffee pot, and downed 2 ibuprofen with a glass of tap water. While the coffee brewed, I sat at my small kitchen table and opened Instagram. Okay, Caleb, I muttered, tapping the search bar. Let's see who your client really is. The problem was, I didn't know her name. I knew she was a redhead. I knew she had money, or at least she spent money. I knew she was in Savannah, and I knew she was involved with Caleb's work. I started with Caleb's profile. He didn't post much, mostly architectural renderings and the occasional landscape shot. I went to his following list, 342 people. I scrolled. It was a tedious mix of other architects, landscape design firms, local restaurants, and a few college buddies. I looked for red hair in the tiny circular profile pictures. I clicked on a Sarah. Private profile, no bio, unlikely. I clicked on a Jessica, a hairstylist in Atlanta. No, I clicked on a modern Savannah living, a brand account. My coffee machine hissed, signaling it was done. I poured a mug, black, and went back to the scroll. My eyes were starting to strain. Maybe she wasn't someone he followed. Maybe he was smart enough to keep her off his main feed. but arrogance usually trumped caution. I knew that. Caleb was careful about his work, but he was sloppy about his ego. If this woman was as flashy as she looked, she wouldn't be hiding. She would be broadcasting. I remembered the client excuse. The Henderson Project. I searched for the hashtag Savannah Architecture. Thousands of results. I narrowed it down. Luxury. Living Savannah. I scrolled through photos of high-end kitchens and marble bathrooms. Then I saw it. It wasn't a photo of her. It was a photo of a garden. My garden. Well, not my garden, but the garden Caleb and I had designed together on a napkin 3 months ago for the Henderson proposal. I recognized the specific curvature of the retaining wall. I recognized the Japanese maples he insisted on. I clicked the photo. The account name was Brielle Southern Charms. I clicked the profile. My breath hitched in my throat. There she was, the redhead, Brielle. Her bio read, Interior Design Enthusiast, Lifestyle Curator, Savannah and Charleston, creating my own fairy tale. I scrolled down her grid. It was an explosion of beige, cream, and crimson, selfies in expensive restaurants, shots of designer shoes. And there, interspersed between the narcissism, were the breadcrumbs. Posted 4 days ago. A photo of 2 glasses of wine on a familiar wooden desk. Caption, late nights at the office with my favorite architect. Building dreams takes time. Posted 2 weeks ago. A photo of her hand, manicured, ringless, resting on a man's arm. The man was wearing a vintage Omega watch. Caption, he knows exactly how to make me laugh. So grateful for this man. I looked at the watch. It was the Omega I had saved up for 6 months to buy Caleb for our first anniversary. Posted 6 weeks ago. A selfie of her and Caleb. His back was to the camera, but he was looking over his shoulder at her, smiling. It was blurry, artistic, soft launch style. Caption, weekend getaway to Charleston. Finally found someone who matches my energy. I felt sick, physically ill. The bile rose in my throat, hot and sour. 6 weeks? No. I scrolled further. Posted July 14th. A photo of blueprints. Caleb's blueprints. Caption, sneak peek of our new project. My boyfriend is a genius. July. It was November. She'd been calling him her boyfriend for 4 months. I took a screenshot, then another, then another. Got you, I whispered. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. I got you. Protagonist, Ilara Vance, school teacher, 29. Villain, Caleb Brennan, landscape architect, 31. Mistress, Brielle, last name unknown yet, likely Southern charm handle, wealthy influencer. Grandmother, Eleanor Brennan, the matriarch, rich, terrifying. The cheating. Ongoing for at least 4 months since July. Brielle thinks Caleb is her boyfriend. Caleb is playing both sides. The cleaning lady incident. Brielle mistook Ilara for cleaning staff at the office. Caleb didn't correct her. Current location. Ilara's apartment, Thanksgiving morning. Inventory. iPad with screenshots of Brielle's Instagram. Next goal. Organize the evidence and survive Thanksgiving dinner. I sat at my kitchen table, my coffee growing cold in the mug, and stared at the screen until my eyes burned. It wasn't just the infidelity that made my stomach churn. It was the meticulous architecture of the lie. It was the fact that he had built an entire second existence, complete with its own geography, its own cast of characters, and its own timeline, right alongside ours. I scrolled to a post from September. It was a photo of a brunch spread, avocado toast, mimosas, and a man's hand reaching for the pepper shaker. On the pinky finger of that hand was a small silver scar. Caleb had gotten that scar falling off his bike when he was 12. I had kissed that scar 1,000 times. Caption, Sunday fun day with my love, planning our future one mimosa at a time. Soulmate, wedding bells. I remembered that Sunday. I remembered it vividly because Caleb had told me he was helping his mother fix a leak in her roof. He'd even sent me a text complaining about the humidity in her attic. "You were eating avocado toast," I whispered to the empty room. The betrayal felt physical, like a bruised rib. "You were drinking champagne while I was at the pharmacy picking up your allergy medication because I thought you'd be dusty from the attic." I felt stupid. That was the worst part. I felt profoundly, achingly stupid. How had I not seen it? How had I missed the signs? The late nights, the emergency client meetings, the sudden need for privacy with his phone. I had attributed it all to stress. I had been the supportive, understanding partner, giving him space to grow his career, while he was using that space to grow a relationship with a woman who used hashtags like luxury, lifestyle. I tapped on another photo, October 4th, a picture of a diamond ring on a velvet tray. Caption, "Just looking." But a girl can dream, right? He knows my style perfectly. Pair cut, future misses. I couldn't breathe. October 4th. That was the day after my birthday. For my birthday, Caleb had given me a gift card to a bookstore and a card that he had clearly bought at a gas station on the way home. I had told myself it was fine, that he was busy, that money was tight because of the business. But here he was, looking at engagement rings with a woman he had been seeing for a few months. My finger hovered over the screen. I wanted to comment. I wanted to type, "He can't afford that ring, honey. He can barely afford his rent." But I stopped myself. Blowing it up now would be too easy. It would be a messy digital explosion that he could delete and deny. He would say she was crazy. He would say she stole the photos. He would gaslight me until I doubted my own sanity. No, I needed something he couldn't delete. I needed something tangible. I needed to present this to the one person whose opinion actually mattered to his financial future. I needed to present this to Grandmother Eleanor. I decided I needed physical copies. I couldn't just pass my iPad around the Thanksgiving table. Knowing my luck, a notification would pop up, or the battery would die, or Caleb would snatch it out of my hands and smash it on the floor. I needed hard evidence, glossy, undeniable paper evidence. I walked into my small home office, which was really just a desk shoved into the corner of the guest bedroom, and woke up my ancient inkjet printer. It whirred to life with a sound like a dying cat. "Please," I begged it, "just this once. Work with me." I sent the first batch of screenshots to the printer. The machine chugged. It pulled a sheet of paper halfway in, then stopped. A red light started blinking. Paper jam. "No," I said, my voice rising. "No, no, no." I yanked at the paper. It tore. Half of it came out. The other half remained lodged deep within the plastic bowels of the machine. I felt a surge of rage so pure and hot it almost blinded me. It wasn't about the printer. It was about everything. It was about the red dress, the lies, the wasted years, the fact that I was 29 years old and single again, and I couldn't even print a piece of paper to prove I wasn't crazy. I slammed my hand down on the top of the printer, hard. "Work!" I screamed. "Why won't anything just work?" The plastic casing cracked under my fist. A piece of the paper tray snapped off and clattered onto the floor. I stood there, breathing heavily, my hand throbbing. The red light continued to blink. Blink, blink, blink. Mocking me. I sank into the office chair and covered my face with my hands. I wanted to cry. The tears were right there, pressing against the back of my eyes, hot and stinging. If I started crying now, I wouldn't stop. I would cry until my eyes were swollen shut, and then I would have to show up to Thanksgiving looking like a victim. "I am not a victim," I said, forcing the words through my teeth. I looked at the broken printer. It was a sign. This wasn't the way. Scraps of paper looked messy. Scraps of paper looked like the ravings of a jealous girlfriend. I looked at my iPad. Grandmother Eleanor respected presentation. She respected preparation. When she hosted the Historical Society meetings, she used a projector. She liked clear fonts and organized data. I wouldn't bring a stack of papers. I would bring a keynote presentation. I would curate it like a museum exhibit. The Rise and Fall of Caleb Brennan. I grabbed the iPad. I would do it digitally, but I would do it so professionally that no one could look away. But first, I needed more than just Instagram posts. I needed corroboration. I looked at the photo of the coffee cup again. The logo on the sleeve was blurry, but I recognized the green swirl. The Roasted Bean. It was a trendy spot downtown, the kind of place that charged $7 for a latte and didn't have Wi-Fi because they wanted you to connect. I grabbed my purse. The drive downtown was a blur of aggressive lane changes and white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. I kept checking my rearview mirror, terrified I would see Caleb's truck. Logic told me he was probably still asleep, or nursing a hangover, or frantically trying to come up with a lie to tell his grandmother, but paranoia whispered that he was tracking me. I parked 3 blocks away from the Roasted Bean to avoid being seen. The air outside was crisp, a rare cool morning for Savannah, but I was sweating in my t-shirt. I pulled a cardigan around myself, my armor, and walked toward the cafe. The Roasted Bean was busy. The line snaked out the door. The smell of roasted espresso and burnt sugar hit me as I stepped inside. I scanned the room. It was an industrial chic nightmare of exposed brick and uncomfortable metal stools. And then I saw it. In the corner, near the window, was the table. It was the same table from Brielle's photo. I recognized the specific grain of the reclaimed wood and the way the light hit the brick wall behind it. He sat there, I thought, staring at the empty chairs. He sat there and held her hand. I imagined them there. I imagined Caleb laughing, that deep, genuine laugh I hadn't heard in months, at something she said. I imagined him leaning in to wipe a crumb off her cheek. The mental image was so vivid I almost gagged. "Can I help you?" I snapped back to reality. I was at the front of the line. The barista was looking at me with a mixture of boredom and impatience. She was young, maybe 20, with purple streaks in her hair and a name tag that read, Sienna. "Hi," I said, my voice sounding too high, too brittle. "Yes, I'll have a black coffee, large. Room for cream?" "No, just black." I paid and moved to the pickup counter. I needed to talk to her. I needed to know if they were regulars. But how do you ask a stranger if your boyfriend is cheating on you without sounding like a lunatic? I waited. Sienna moved with efficient lethargy, steaming milk and pulling shots. The cafe quieted down slightly as the morning rush ebbed. When she slid my coffee across the counter, I didn't leave. "It's busy today," I said. Weak, pathetic small talk. Sienna didn't even look up. "It's always busy." I actually think my boyfriend comes here a lot," I said. The lie tasted like ash. "He loves this place. Caleb? Tall, dark hair, looks like he hasn't slept in a week?" Sienna paused. She wiped her hands on a rag and looked at me. Her expression shifted from boredom to something like recognition. "Caleb?" she said. "The architect?" My heart stopped. "Yes, that's him." "Yeah, he comes in here," she said. She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "He's here all the time with that redhead. Brielle, right?" The name hung in the air between us like a suspended guillotine blade. Brielle. Hearing a stranger say it made it real in a way the Instagram captions hadn't. It wasn't just a digital persona. She was a real person, in the real world, taking up space in my boyfriend's life. "Right," I said, forcing a tight conspiratorial smile that felt like it might crack my face open. "Brielle, they come in often?" Sienna rolled her eyes. It was a magnificent full-body eye roll that spoke volumes about her opinion of the couple. "Every Tuesday and Thursday," she said, grabbing a cloth to wipe down the espresso machine. "Like clockwork, 10 a.m. usually. They sit in that corner window seat for like 2 hours. Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I felt a wave of dizziness. Tuesday and Thursday mornings were when Caleb had his site visits for the fictitious West Savannah project. He would leave the house early, complaining about the traffic, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. "He tells me he's at work," I said. I didn't mean to say it out loud. The words just slipped out, heavy and quiet. Sienna stopped wiping. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. Her eyes softened, the customer service mask dropping to reveal a young woman who clearly understood the universal language of terrible men. "Oh," she said softly. "Oh, honey. You're the girlfriend?" I nodded. I couldn't trust my voice. "I wondered," Sienna said, leaning her elbows on the counter, "because she is a lot. She talks so loud, like she wants everyone to know they're together. She's always going on about their wedding vision board and how he's designing their forever home." "Wedding vision board," I repeated. The absurdity of it was almost funny. Caleb broke out in hives if I even mentioned picking out a new rug, yet he was planning a wedding with this woman. "Last week," Sienna continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, "she was showing him photos of venues in Charleston, and he was looking at them. He wasn't saying no." That was the dagger. It wasn't that she was pushing, it was that he wasn't pulling away. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Does he look happy?" Sienna hesitated. She looked at the ceiling, then back at me. "He looks expensive, like he's playing a part. But honestly, he looks relieved when he leaves. But she looks like she won the lottery." "She thinks she did," I said, gripping my coffee cup until the cardboard sleeve crumpled. "Thank you, Sienna. You have no idea how much you've helped me." "Hey," Sienna said as I turned to leave, "if you need a witness for the murder trial, I'm off at 4. I actually laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound, but it was a laugh. "I have a better plan," I said, "but thank you." I walked back to my car with a new sense of purpose. I had a schedule now, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I had a witness. The narrative was building itself. I unlocked the Civic and slid into the driver's seat. I put the key in the ignition and turned it. Click. Nothing. No roar of the engine, no hum of the dashboard, just a singular, pathetic click. I tried again. Click, click, click. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, hitting the steering wheel with the heel of my hand. "Not now, please, not now." I checked the dome light. It was dim, fading to orange. I must have left a light on last night in my panic. Or maybe the universe was just piling on because it found my suffering amusing. I slumped back in the seat. The heat was already rising in the car. I was trapped in a metal box, miles from home, with a dead battery and a dead relationship. My phone buzzed in my lap. "Incoming call. Caleb." I stared at it. I wanted to answer. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him that his site visits were about to be site visited by his grandmother's wrath. I wanted to ask him to come jump my car because that's what a boyfriend should do, but I couldn't. If I heard his voice now, I would lose my nerve. I would start crying or yelling, and he would know I was unraveling. I needed him to think I was calm. I needed him to think I was coming to dinner to talk. I let it ring. I opened my door and stepped out into the parking lot. I needed help, and I couldn't ask him. A middle-aged woman was loading groceries into a minivan 2 spots over. She looked tired. She looked kind. "Excuse me?" I called out. "Ma'am?" She looked up, startled. "I'm so sorry to bother you," I said, putting on my best, helpless schoolteacher face. "My battery is dead. Do you happen to have jumper cables?" She hesitated, looking at her watch. Then she looked at my face, which I'm sure looked as devastated as I felt, and sighed. "Yeah," she said. "Yeah, I think my husband put some in the back. Hold on." It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of fumbling with cables, of awkward small talk about the weather, of praying that the sparks wouldn't ignite the fumes of my decaying life. When my engine finally roared to life, I could have kissed that woman. "Thank you," I said, genuinely tearing up. "You saved my life." "It's just a battery, honey," she said, wiping grease off her hands. "Things break. You just gotta jump 'em and keep moving." "Yeah," I said, watching her drive away. "Things break." The engine was running, but I wasn't going home. Not yet. I had one more stop. I drove to Caleb's office building. It was a risk. If he was there, if he saw my car, the element of surprise would be gone. But it was a holiday. The office should be closed. I pulled up to the gate. Miles was in the booth. Good old Miles, who I had brought Christmas cookies to last year. Miles, who always asked about my students. I rolled down the window. "Miss Alara," Miles beamed, his gold tooth flashing. "Happy Thanksgiving. What are you doing here on a holiday?" "Hi, Miles," I said. I tried to smile, but my lip quivered. I decided to lean into it. I let the sadness bleed into my expression. I actually think I left my earring upstairs last night. My pearl one? It was my mother's. Miles's face fell. "Oh no, that's terrible." "I know the office is closed," I said, "and I know I shouldn't ask, but is there any way you could let me just run up and check the hallway? I was pretty upset when I left." He looked conflicted. "Miss Alara, you know the policy. No visitors on holidays without a key card." "Please, Miles," I said. "I won't go in the suite, just the hallway. I think it fell when I was leaving." He studied me. He saw the red rimming my eyes. He saw the desperation. He didn't know the whole story, but he knew something was wrong. "Mr. Caleb ain't here," he said quietly. "I know," I said. He sighed and pressed the button to open the gate. "5 minutes, Miss Alara. And if anyone asks, you slipped in behind a delivery truck." "Thank you, Miles." I parked and ran inside. But I didn't go to the elevator. I went to the front desk in the lobby where the visitor logbook sat on the counter. It was a physical book, old school. Caleb's building manager was a Luddite who didn't trust digital systems. Thank God for Luddites. I flipped the pages back. November, October, September, August. There she was, Brielle Richardson. Time in, 6:15 p.m. Time out, 8:45 p.m. Destination, Suite 800. She signed in. She actually signed in. I flipped more pages. Tuesday, Oct 14th, Brielle Richardson. Thursday, Oct 16th, Brielle Richardson. Tuesday, Oct 21, Brielle Richardson. It was a wall of evidence written in her own loopy, bubbly handwriting. She had dotted her I's with little circles. I pulled out my phone and started snapping photos. I took pictures of every entry: July, August, September, October, November. "Signature," I whispered, capturing a particularly clear entry. Timestamp. Destination. It wasn't just an affair. It was a routine. It was a schedule. It was a second job that he had been working diligently while I sat at home grading papers. I heard the elevator ding. Panic spiked in my chest. I slammed the book shut. "Miss Alara." It was Miles. He had come in from the booth. "You find that earring?" I looked at him. I held up my phone, my hand shaking slightly. "No, Miles," I said, and for the first time all morning my voice was strong. But I found exactly what I was looking for. Protagonist. Alara Vance. Evidence collected. Instagram screenshots dating back to July, captions about dream home and wedding. Testimony from Sienna, barista at the Roasted Bean, confirming Tuesday, Thursday dates. Photos of the visitor logbook showing Brielle Richardson's sign-ins for months. New character. Sienna, barista. Miles, security guard. Villain status. Caleb is calling to texting frantically. Brielle is confirmed as Brielle Richardson. Current state. Alara has the evidence. Car battery is fixed. She is ready to assemble the presentation. Next step. Go home, organize the data, get the dress, go to dinner. I left the office building with the photos of the logbook burning a hole in my digital pocket, but I couldn't go home. Not yet. I had promised Grandmother Eleanor I would bring my famous cranberry chutney. It was a lie of a recipe, just canned sauce doctored with orange zest and expensive port, but she loved it, and showing up empty-handed was a crime punishable by social exile in the Brennan family. I pulled into the parking lot of the high-end organic market on Abercorn Street. My hands were still shaking on the wheel. I looked at them, pale, trembling, gripping the leather like I was holding onto a cliff edge. "Get it together," I hissed. "You are buying cranberries. You are not buying a weapon." I walked into the store. The air conditioning was frigid. I grabbed a basket and marched toward the produce section. "Ilara! Oh my goodness, Ilara!" My stomach dropped through the floor. I knew that voice. It was Mrs. Higgins, the wife of Caleb's senior partner, a woman who wore pearls to the gym and whose primary hobby was collecting information. I froze near the artisanal cheeses. I forced a smile onto my face, a rictus of delight that felt like it might snap my jaw hinges. "Mrs. Higgins!" "Hi." She rolled her cart toward me, her eyes scanning my face with laser precision. "You look tired, dear. Is Caleb working you too hard with all that holiday prep?" "Oh, you know," I said, reaching for a jar of olives I didn't need just to have something to do with my hands. "Just the usual madness. Caleb is actually at the office right now, wrapping up some last-minute details." Lying felt physical. It felt like swallowing glass. "He's not at the office." My brain screamed. "He's probably hyperventilating in his shower right now." "Such a dedicated boy," Mrs. Higgins cooed. "We were just saying last night how lucky he is to have someone like you who understands the demands of the firm. Some women just get jealous, you know?" She touched my arm. It was meant to be comforting, but her nails dug in slightly, a little pinch of toxic solidarity. "I know," I said. My voice sounded hollow. "Trust is everything, isn't it?" "Absolutely," she beamed. "Are we seeing you at the club Christmas party this year? I heard Caleb is up for that award." "Wouldn't miss it," I lied. "We're really looking forward to it." I watched her walk away, checking her list. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to lean against the shelf of gluten-free crackers. She had no idea. In 6 hours, the firm she was so proud of would be in chaos. Caleb's reputation, the one she just praised, was about to be incinerated. I threw the cranberries into my basket. I didn't care about the chutney anymore. I just needed to get out of there before I screamed the truth at a woman buying organic kale. Back at my apartment, I treated the evidence with the same clinical detachment I used for grading third-grade history projects. I sat at my dining table, my iPad propped up, a fresh cup of coffee steaming beside me. I opened Keynote. I selected a template. Clean, minimalist, professional. Title slide, I muttered, my fingers flying. The truth. No, that was too dramatic. Too emotional. I deleted it. Timeline of events, July, November. Better. Cold. Factual. I imported the screenshots. Slide 1. July 14th. Brielle's post about the blueprints. Slide 2. August 2nd. The visitor log photo showing her entry at 6:15 p.m. Slide 3. September 10th. The brunch photo with Caleb's scar visible. Slide 4. October 4th. The engagement ring post. I cropped the images. I highlighted the dates in red. I added captions. Figure A. Subject claims, boyfriend designed space. Figure B. Subject signs in after business hours. I felt like a sociopath. I should have been crying. I should have been shredding his clothes or burning his photos. Instead, I was adjusting the kerning on a font. But this was how I survived. If I let myself feel the heartbreak, the agonizing, ripping pain of realizing the man I loved was a stranger, I would collapse. If I turned it into a project, into a lesson plan, I could control it. I added a slide for Sienna's testimony. Witness statement. The roasted bean employee. They come in every Tuesday and Thursday. She discusses wedding plans publicly. I looked at the presentation. It was beautiful. It was devastating. It was 12 slides of pure destruction. My phone buzzed on the table. Caleb. I'm heading to grandmother's early to help set up. Please tell me you're coming. I need to know you're okay. I stared at the text. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about the narrative. He needed me there as a prop. He needed the sensible girlfriend to stand next to him and smile so he could play the part of the successful heir. I didn't reply. I saved the presentation as a PDF and marked it offline available. I'm coming, Caleb, I whispered to the screen. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I looked at the clock. 11:30 a.m. I had 3 hours before I had to be at the estate. I walked to my closet and looked at the navy dress I had worn yesterday. It was crumpled on the floor where I had left it. It looked pathetic. It looked like the dress of a woman who gets mistaken for the cleaning lady. I couldn't wear that. I couldn't wear anything I owned. Everything in this closet was bought with sensibility in mind. Teacher clothes, cardigans, modest hems. I needed war paint. I grabbed my credit card, the emergency one, the one I saved for car repairs or medical bills. This is a medical emergency, I rationalized. I am surgically removing a tumor from my life. I drove to Blue, the boutique on Broughton Street where the sales associates looked at you like they were scanning your bank account balance with X-ray vision. The bell chimed as I walked in. The store smelled of expensive candles and judgment. A woman with a sleek blonde bob looked up from her phone. She didn't smile. "Can I help you find something?" she asked, her tone suggesting that I was probably lost. "I need a dress," I said, "for a formal Thanksgiving dinner at the Brennan estate." Her posture changed instantly. The name Brennan was a skeleton key in this town. "Oh," she said, her voice softening into a purr. "Of course. Let me show you the new arrivals." She pulled out dresses that were nice. Beige, cream, pale pink, safe. "No," I said, pushing a hanger away. "I don't want safe. I want memorable." She paused, studying me. "Memorable good or memorable? Striking." "Striking," I said. "I want to look like I own the place." She pulled a dress from the back. It was emerald green, silk, high neck but backless. It was elegant, but it had an edge. It was a dress that said, "I have secrets, and I am not afraid of them." I tried it on. I looked in the mirror. The green made my eyes pop. The cut made me look taller, sharper. I didn't look like a third-grade teacher. I looked like a woman who could poison your tea and get away with it. "It's perfect," I said. "It is," the saleswoman agreed, standing behind me. "It's aggressive, in a good way." I looked at the price tag, $600. That was half my rent. That was my entire grocery budget for 2 months. I thought about Caleb buying Brielle dinners. I thought about the wine. I thought about the cleaning lady. "I'll take it," I said. My hand didn't even shake when I handed her the card. I sat in my car outside the boutique, the garment bag lying across the passenger seat like a body bag. My phone was vibrating again. "Caleb." "Alara, please. Just text me back." "Caleb." "Grandmother is asking where you are." "Caleb." "If you don't come, I don't know what I'll tell them." I felt a surge of power mixed with disgust. He was unraveling. He was so terrified of his grandmother's disapproval that he was begging the woman he cheated on to save him. I decided to throw him a bone, just enough to keep him on the hook. Me. "I'm running late. Had to pick something up." The bubbles appeared instantly. "Caleb." "Oh, thank God, thank you, I love you. I'll meet you at the door. We can talk later, just please be normal today." Be normal. That was his request. After destroying my trust, after humiliating me, after 4 months of lying, his only concern was that I be normal, so he wouldn't be uncomfortable. I laughed. It was a dark, ugly sound in the quiet car. "Normal," I said. "Sure, Caleb, I'll be perfectly normal." I typed one more message. Me. Don't wait outside. I'll let myself in. See you at the table. I wanted him sweating. I wanted him watching the door every 5 seconds, wondering which version of me was going to walk through it, the loving girlfriend or the cleaning lady. The drive to the Brennan estate was usually beautiful. You drove through a tunnel of live oaks dripping with Spanish moss, the sunlight filtering through in dappled patches. Today it felt like driving into a mouth. My stomach was doing somersaults. I had to pull over once, just for a minute, to breathe. I leaned my head against the steering wheel, the cool leather pressing into my forehead. You can do this, I told myself. You are not the one who should be ashamed. You are the prosecutor. He is the defendant. But my body didn't believe me. My hands were clammy. My heart was racing at a pace that felt dangerous. I looked at the garment bag, the emerald dress. I looked at my iPad bag on the passenger floor, the evidence. I was bringing a bomb to a family dinner. I was about to detonate a nuclear device in the middle of pecan pie and sweet tea. Was I really this person? Was I really someone who plotted revenge? I thought about the last 2 years. I thought about how I dimmed my light for him. How I stopped wearing heels because he said they made me taller than him. How I stopped talking about my master's degree because he said it was boring. I thought about Brielle. Are you the cleaning crew? Yes, I was this person because he made me this person. I put the car back in drive. The nausea didn't leave, but it hardened. It turned into fuel. The Brennan estate was intimidating on a Tuesday. On Thanksgiving, it was a fortress of Southern tradition. Cars lined the long gravel driveway, Range Rovers, Mercedes, and my Honda Civic, looking like a stubborn weed in a rose garden. I parked near the back. I wanted the walk. I needed the air. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. The emerald dress was stunning. My hair was pulled back in a severe chic bun. My makeup was flawless. Extra concealer to hide the lack of sleep, a bold lip to draw attention to my words. I grabbed the gift bag containing my iPad. I walked up the driveway. The gravel crunched loudly under my heels. The front door was open. I could hear the murmur of voices, the clinking of glass, the laughter. It sounded warm. It sounded inviting. It sounded like a lie. Caleb was standing on the porch. Of course he was. He had ignored my text. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, his eyes bloodshot. He was wearing his good sweater, the cashmere one I bought him, but he looked like he was shrinking inside it. When he saw me, his whole body sagged with relief. "Elara," he breathed, taking a step down the stairs. "You came." He reached for me. He actually reached for me, like he was going to hug me, like he hadn't had another woman's hands on him 24 hours ago. I sidestepped him, smoothly, gracefully, like a matador dodging a very slow, very stupid bull. "Happy Thanksgiving, Caleb," I said. My voice was ice water. "Elara, please," he whispered, glancing nervously at the open door behind him. Can we talk for a second?" "No," I said, smiling brightly. "Grandmother is waiting. You know how she hates tardiness." "But I brought the chutney," I said, lifting the bag, "and a little surprise." "A surprise?" He looked terrified. "Move, Caleb," I said, my smile never wavering. "We have a family to entertain." I walked past him, up the stairs, and into the house. I didn't look back. I could feel his eyes on my spine, burning with panic, but I didn't care. I was in. The stage was set. Protagonist: Elara Vance. Current outfit: emerald green silk dress, cost $600. Inventory: iPad with the presentation hidden in a gift bag. Location: inside the Brennan estate, just entered. Caleb's state: panicked, looks physically ill, tried to intercept her, but failed. Key evidence: 12-slide PDF including visitor logs, Instagram timeline, and barista testimony. Next beat: the toxic benevolence of the family greetings, the dinner, and the speech. I stepped across the threshold and the air inside the house felt different. Heavier, thicker, perfumed with beeswax and roasting turkey. It was the smell of money. Not new, flashy crypto money, but old, quiet plantation money that sat in the walls and judged you. Caleb scrambled in behind me, closing the door a little too quickly. I could hear his breathing. It was ragged, like a dog that had been running too long. "Alara," he hissed, his hand hovering near my elbow but not daring to touch the emerald silk. "Please, my mother is in the parlor. Just smile? For me?" I turned to him. I looked at his sweaty upper lip. I looked at the desperation in his eyes that he was trying to disguise as affection. "I am smiling, Caleb," I said, showing him my teeth. "I'm having a wonderful time." I wasn't, of course. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought the fabric of my dress might vibrate. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to get back in my car, to drive until I hit the ocean. But I pushed it down. I packed the fear into a tight, hard ball in my stomach and swallowed it. "There they are!" A voice boom echoed from the hallway. It was Caleb's mother, Catherine. She swept toward us, a vision in beige cashmere, holding a glass of white wine like a scepter. "We were beginning to worry," she cooed, leaning in to kiss my cheek. Her lips were dry and cold. "Caleb said you were delayed. I hope everything is all right. You know how Mother gets when the schedule slips." "Everything is perfect, Catherine," I said. "I just had to make a quick stop for the perfect outfit." She pulled back and really looked at me. Her eyes widened slightly as she took in the dress. It wasn't a look of approval exactly. It was the look a general gives a soldier who suddenly shows up with a bazooka. "Oh," she said. "Green. It's very striking. Very festive." "I thought so," I said. "Well," she said, pivoting back to her son, "Caleb, fix your hair. You look like you've been in a wind tunnel. Mother is in the library." Caleb flinched. "Yes, Mom, immediately." He looked at me, pleading with his eyes. "Don't leave me," they said. "Don't say anything." I winked at him. It was a cruel, playful wink. "Go fix yourself, honey. I'll go say hello to grandmother." The library was the heart of the house. It was a room lined with mahogany bookshelves that held books nobody had opened in 50 years. In the center, sitting in a high-backed leather wing chair like a queen on a throne, was Grandmother Eleanor. She was 83, sharp as a tack, and terrifying. She held the family purse strings with an iron grip, and everyone in the room, aunts, uncles, cousins, rotated around her like planets, orbiting a dangerous sun. I walked in. The room went quiet. The emerald dress swished softly against my legs. "Grandmother," I said, projecting my voice. "Happy Thanksgiving." Eleanor turned. She adjusted her glasses. Her gaze swept over me, analyzing every inch, the hair, the pearls, the dress, the shoes. I stood perfectly still. I let her look. I wasn't the mousy teacher today. I was the executioner. "Alara," she said. Her voice was raspy, seasoned with bourbon and judgment. "Come here, child, let me see you." I walked forward. I could feel the eyes of the family on my back. Cousin Beau was staring. Aunt Lydia was whispering to Uncle Bernard. I stopped in front of her chair. "You look different," Eleanor said. It wasn't a compliment. It was an accusation. "You look expensive." I felt like celebrating, I said, keeping my chin high. "It's a special year." "Is it?" She raised a perfectly plucked eyebrow. "And why is that? Has my grandson finally stopped dragging his feet?" The room seemed to hold its breath. This was the question everyone asked, every holiday. "When is the ring coming?" I smiled. It was genuine this time, fueled by the delicious irony. "We certainly have some news to discuss," I said, "but we should wait for dinner. I wouldn't want to spoil the appetite." Eleanor studied me for a long, uncomfortable moment. She saw something. She saw the steel in my spine that hadn't been there at Easter. "Good," she said, tapping her cane on the floor. "I like a woman who knows how to make an entrance. Go get yourself a drink. You look like you need one." I retreated to the makeshift bar in the corner of the parlor. My hands were trembling again, just a little. I poured myself a glass of sparkling water. I needed a clear head. "Ilara." "There you are." It was Aunt Lydia. She was a woman who believed that a woman's worth was directly correlated to her reproductive output. She cornered me between a potted fern and the fireplace. "I love the dress," she said, touching the silk with sticky fingers. "But isn't it a bit loose around the waist?" She winked. I stared at her. "I'm not pregnant, Lydia." "Oh," she said, her face falling into a mask of toxic sympathy. "Oh, honey, still? You know, I was reading this article about stress and fertility. Maybe if you just worked a little less? That teaching job is so demanding. Caleb makes enough, doesn't he?" I felt a flash of heat up my neck. Caleb makes enough. Caleb was currently spending his money on Omega watches for a woman who thought I was the maid. "Actually," I said, my voice sharp, "I think financial independence is very important. You never know what the future holds." Lydia laughed, a high, tinkling sound. "Oh, you millennials, always so dramatic. Once you have a ring on that finger, you'll understand. A husband provides comfort." "Comfort," I repeated. "Right." Caleb appeared at my side. He had smoothed his hair, but he still looked haunted. He put a hand on the small of my back. I flinched away instantly, stepping into the fern. "Aunt Lydia," Caleb said, his voice strained, "can I steal Ilara? I think she needs some air." "She's fine, Caleb," Lydia scolded. "We were just talking about babies. You two need to get on that. I'm not getting any younger." "We're trying," Caleb lied. He actually lied. He looked at me, his eyes begging me to play along. "We're figuring things out." I looked at him. The audacity, the sheer unmitigated gall to stand there, with the scent of another woman probably still clinging to his conscience, and talk about trying for a family. "We are definitely figuring things out," I said. "In fact, I've figured out quite a lot recently." Caleb's hand dropped from the air. He looked terrified. He grabbed my arm, squeezing hard. "Drink," he muttered. "Let's get you another drink." He practically dragged me away from Lydia. "Stop it," he hissed in my ear. "Stop scaring me. What are you doing?" "I'm mingling, Caleb," I whispered back. "I'm being the perfect girlfriend. Isn't that what you wanted?" Dinner was announced. We shuffled into the dining room, a cavernous space dominated by a table long enough to land a plane on. There were name cards. Of course there were. I found mine. Ilara. Right next to Caleb, and directly across from Grandmother Eleanor. It was the hot seat, the interrogation zone. I sat down. The chair was heavy mahogany. I placed my gift bag under the chair, right against my ankles. I could feel the hard edge of the iPad through the paper. It was grounding. Caleb sat next to me. He pulled his chair in close. Too close. His knee brushed mine under the table. I moved my leg away until I hit the table leg. "You're so far away," he whispered, leaning in to grab his napkin. "Not far enough," I murmured, staring at the crystal water goblet. "Ilara, please," he said under his breath. "I know you're angry. I get it. But can we just get through the turkey? I promise I'll explain everything tonight. I'll make it up to you. I'll book us a trip. Paris? You want to go to Paris?" Paris. He was offering me Paris like a treat for a well-behaved dog. I turned to look at him. "Do you think a croissant is going to fix this, Caleb?" "I think." He swallowed hard. "I think we love each other, and people make mistakes." "Mistakes," I said. "Like forgetting to take out the trash? Or mistakes like dating another woman for 4 months?" "Shh." He looked around wildly. "Keep your voice down." He reached for my hand under the table. His palm was damp. He squeezed my fingers, trying to force an intimacy that wasn't there. It was a manipulation tactic. If he held my hand, I couldn't slap him. If he held my hand, we were a unit. I ripped my hand away. I placed it on top of the table next to my salad fork. Flat, visible, unreachable. Caleb looked at my hand, then at my face. He looked like a man who realized the brakes had been cut, but the car was already moving. The servers cleared the salad plates. The room quieted down. The air grew heavy with anticipation. Grandmother Eleanor stood up. She didn't need to tap a glass. Her rising was signal enough. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks were lowered. "Family," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried to the corners of the room. "We have much to be thankful for this year. The business is strong, the family is healthy, the house is standing." There was a murmur of agreement. Hear, hear. "As is our tradition," she continued, her eyes scanning the table, "we will go around the circle. Each of you will speak. And I expect honesty. I expect reflection." My heart began to hammer again. This was it. This was the vehicle. "We will start with Bernard," she said, pointing to the far end of the table, "and we will move clockwise, ending with Caleb and Alara." Clockwise. I did the math instantly. Bernard, Lydia, Beau, Catherine, 3 cousins, then me, then Caleb. I was the penultimate speaker, the warm-up act for the golden boy. It was perfect. "Thank you, Mother," Bernard said, standing up. He tugged at his suit jacket. "This year, I am grateful for the firm's expansion into Atlanta. It was a risk, but fortune favors the bold." He raised his glass. Everyone drank. I didn't drink. I watched Caleb. He was staring at his plate, pushing a pearl onion around with his fork. He looked like he was trying to solve a physics equation that proved he wasn't a cheater. The circle moved agonizingly slowly. It was a parade of privilege and banality. Aunt Lydia was grateful for her new personal trainer, Paolo. Cousin Beau was grateful for his new boat, the Sea Witch. Cousin Sarah was grateful that her sorority won Chapter of the Year. I listened to them, and I felt a strange dissociation. Their problems were so small. Their joys were so material. My boyfriend has a secret fiancé named Brielle, who posts about him on Instagram. That was my reality. I felt like an alien. I felt like I was watching a play from behind the curtain. The tension in my body was winding tighter and tighter. My legs started bouncing under the table. I forced it to stop. "Focus," I told myself. "Don't hyperventilate, don't cry, just deliver the data." Caleb leaned toward me again. "Alara," he whispered, so low only I could hear. "When it's your turn, just say you're grateful for us. Please, for grandmother. Don't make a scene." He was still trying to manage me. He still thought he could direct the play. "A scene?" I whispered back, my eyes fixed on Cousin Sarah across the table. "Caleb, I'm not going to make a scene." The circle reached Catherine, Caleb's mother. She stood up, looking elegant and fragile. "I am grateful," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "that my son has found such a steady partner. Alara, you are a blessing to this family. You keep him grounded. You remind us of what matters." She smiled at me, a genuine, hopeful smile. My stomach twisted. She didn't know. She was praising the executioner. "Thank you, Catherine," I mouthed. She sat down. The room turned to me. 20 faces. Grandmother Eleanor's sharp gaze, Catherine's hopeful smile, Caleb's terrified, sweating profile. "Alara," Grandmother Eleanor said, "the floor is yours." I took a deep breath. The air tasted like rosemary and impending doom. I reached down. My fingers brushed the cool metal of the iPad. "I have a lot to be grateful for," I said, staying seated for just a second longer. "But I think I need a visual aid for this one." Caleb froze. His fork clattered onto his plate. The sound rang out like a gunshot in the silent room. I stood up. "Protagonist, Ilara Vance. Current location: standing at the dinner table, holding the iPad. Villain state. Caleb is terrified, having just realized she has a visual aid. Audience: the entire Brennan family, approx 20 people, focused on Ilara. Key setup. Catherine, Caleb's mom, just praised Ilara for being steady. Next step: the presentation, the reveal, the toxic benevolence, destroyed by hard data. I stood up. The chair legs scraped against the hardwood floor with a sound that seemed to shriek. I picked up the iPad, woke the screen, and tapped the presentation mode. The first slide glowed with high-definition clarity. The truth about Caleb Brennan. "I'm grateful," I began, my voice steady, though my knees felt like they were made of damp sand, "that I learned the value of transparency this year." I turned the iPad toward Grandmother Eleanor first. "For example," I said, "I discovered that transparency is very important when you are designing a life with someone, or two someones." Eleanor squinted at the screen. Her expression didn't change, but her grip on her wine glass tightened until her knuckles turned white. "Ilara," Caleb choked out. He half rose from his chair. "Ilara, put that away. Grandmother, she's been under a lot of stress. She's not well." "Sit down, Caleb," Eleanor said. She didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the screen. "Let her speak." Caleb sank back down, looking like a man who had just heard the executioner sharpen the blade. I swiped to the next slide, the timeline. "July," I narrated, walking slowly around the table so Aunt Lydia and Uncle Bernard could see. "This is a post from a woman named Brielle Richardson. As you can see, she is thanking her boyfriend for the blueprints to their dream home." Catherine gasped. It was a wet, horrified sound. That's Caleb's design for the Henderson project." "Correct," I said, moving to the next slide. "August, here is Brielle signing into the Brennan Architecture offices at 6:15 in the evening. She stayed until nearly 9. I looked at Mrs. Higgins, the partner's wife. "I believe you mentioned Caleb was working late on those nights." "He was, just not on architecture." The room descended into chaos, but it was a quiet, suffocating kind of chaos. No one was screaming yet. They were too stunned. They were watching a train wreck in slow motion, and the train was their golden boy. I swiped again. The cleaning lady slide. "And finally," I said, stopping directly behind Caleb's chair. I could smell his sweat. It smelled like fear and expensive cologne. "We have yesterday evening. I went to the office to surprise Caleb. I found him with Miss Richardson." I paused. I let the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. "She asked me," I said clearly, looking directly at Catherine, "if I was the cleaning crew. She asked me to come back when they were done." Catherine covered her mouth with her hand. Tears welled in her eyes. "Oh my God!" "And the best part?" I continued, looking down at the top of Caleb's head. Caleb didn't correct her. He let her believe I was the help, because it was easier than admitting he had been lying to both of us for 4 months. "It's not true!" Caleb yelled. He slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "She's crazy. She photoshopped these. She's a stalker. I've been trying to get a restraining order." "A restraining order?" I asked, swiping to the slide with the coffee shop testimony. "Is that why you take her to the Roasted Bean every Tuesday and Thursday morning to look at wedding venues?" Caleb opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at the screen. He saw the dates. He saw the timestamps. He saw the inescapable geometry of his own deceit. Grandmother Eleanor stood up. She didn't slam the table. She didn't yell. She simply rose, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Caleb," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried more weight than a scream. Caleb turned to her. He was weeping now. Actual tears were streaming down his face. "Grandmother, please. I can explain. It got out of hand. She has money." "I thought she could introduce me to investors." "Did you?" Eleanor interrupted, her voice cutting through his sobbing like a scalpel. Let that woman call Ilara the cleaning lady? I panicked, Caleb stammered. I didn't know what to do. Did you maintain a relationship with her while sitting at my table? While bringing Ilara to my home? It wasn't a relationship, Caleb pleaded. It was just business that got complicated. Business, Eleanor repeated. She looked at the iPad, which was still displaying the photo of the engagement ring. Is buying an engagement ring business, Caleb? I didn't buy it. We were just looking. So you admit it, Eleanor said. She closed her eyes for a brief second, as if pained by his stupidity. You admit you were shopping for rings with another woman. Caleb froze. He realized too late that he had walked right into the trap. Grandmother. You have disgraced this family, Eleanor said. She opened her eyes. They were hard as flint. You have lied. You have cheated. And worst of all, you have been publicly humiliated because you were not smart enough to cover your tracks. She pointed a trembling finger at the archway leading to the foyer. Get out. Caleb stared at her. What? Grandmother, it's Thanksgiving. I don't care if it is the second coming of Christ, Eleanor said. You will leave my house immediately. Mom! Caleb turned to Catherine. Mom, tell her. Catherine looked at her son. Her face was a mask of tragedy, but she shook her head slowly. You let her call Ilara the maid, Caleb. I raised you better than that. Uncle Bernard? Caleb tried. Bernard was busy studying the label on his wine bottle, pointedly avoiding eye contact. Go, Eleanor commanded, before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing, and leave the house key on the table. Caleb looked around the room. He saw 20 faces turned against him. He saw the ruin of his reputation. He saw me standing there in my emerald dress, holding the evidence of his demise. He stood up. He reached into his pocket and threw his key ring onto the damask tablecloth. It landed with a heavy thud next to the gravy boat. He looked at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes, only hate. I hope you're happy, he spat. I'm grateful, I corrected him. There's a difference. He stormed out. We heard the front door open, then slam shut with a force that shook the window panes. The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hall. You could hear the settling of the old house. Everyone looked at Eleanor. She was still standing, her hand gripping the back of her chair. She took a deep breath, composing herself. She smoothed the front of her dress. Then she looked at me. Ilara, dear, she said, her voice returning to its normal conversational register. You mentioned you brought chutney. Yes, grandmother, I said, putting the iPad down. It's on the sidebar. Excellent, she said. She sat back down. She picked up her fork. And Catherine, please pass the pecan pie. I believe we all need a little sugar after that unpleasantness. The room exhaled. It was surreal. 1 minute we were witnessing an execution. The next we were passing dessert. Catherine sniffled, wiped her eyes, and cut a massive slice of pie. Here, Mother. Ilara, Eleanor said, pointing her fork at me. Sit down, eat. You're too skinny, and you'll need your strength for the dating market. I sat. I took a bite of pie. It tasted like victory. It tasted like freedom. Dinner ended an hour later. The family was oddly solicitous toward me. Uncle Bernard poured me extra wine. Aunt Lydia told me my skin looked glowing. I was no longer the outsider, I was the survivor. I was the one who had cut the cancer out of the family, and they respected the surgical precision. As I was leaving, walking toward the door with my garment bag and my iPad, Eleanor stopped me. Ilara, she called from the parlor. I turned. She was sitting by the fire, a glass of amber liquid in her hand. Yes, grandmother? You handled yourself well, she said. Better than he deserved. Thank you. My other grandson, she said, swirling her drink. Sebastian. You know him? The chef? I I think we met once, I said. At the Christmas party last year? He's opening a new restaurant in Charleston, she said. French fusion. He's a good boy, works too hard, doesn't have his cousin's wandering eye? She looked at me pointedly. I told him he should call you, she said. I told him you have a spine. I like a woman with a spine. I smiled. I'll keep an eye out for his call. You do that, she said. And Alara? Yes? Keep the dress. It suits you. I walked out into the cool night air. The gravel crunched under my feet. My car was waiting. My apartment was waiting. My life, my real life, the one without lies, was waiting. I looked up at the stars. I took a deep breath. I had walked in as the victim. I was walking out as the matriarch's favorite. Not bad for the cleaning lady. It has been exactly 90 days since the Thanksgiving massacre, and let me tell you, the fallout has been nuclear. Caleb is currently living in a studio apartment above a garage in West Savannah. I know this because Savannah is a small town and gossip travels faster than light. Apparently, grandmother Eleanor didn't just kick him out of dinner, she wrote him out of the will the very next morning. The historic house on Gaston Street that he was supposed to inherit, it's going to be turned into a museum foundation. He lost his biggest client, Mrs. Higgins was not amused by the scandal and was quietly let go from the firm by mutual agreement. As for Brielle, the internet is undefeated. Someone, definitely not me, but possibly Sienna the barista, leaked the story to a local gossip blog. Her follower count tanked overnight. Brands dropped her like hot rocks. She tried to do a My Truth live stream, but the comments were just thousands of cleaning bucket emojis. Last I heard, she's trying to pivot to selling essential oils. And me? Well, grandmother Eleanor wasn't kidding. Sebastian called me 2 days after Thanksgiving. We went for coffee, then we went for dinner, then he cooked for me in his new restaurant kitchen after hours. It turns out being treated like a queen is a lot better than being treated like a placeholder. We're taking it slow, but next week is Easter. I'm invited to the Brennan estate. Sebastian says he's making the lamb. I'm bringing the wine, and I'm definitely wearing the green dress. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.